hearing Moonglow by the great American jazz musician and clarinetist Benny Goodman. You're watching Art Talk, I'm Jujhar Singh. Jazz is one of the great genres of music in the world. And the father and the main promoter of jazz in India is, believe it or not, eminent jurist and former Attorney General of India, Soli Sorabji. Hello, Mr. Sorabji. We began by playing one of your favorite pieces of Benny Goodman.
That's true.
Well, it's nice to see that, an eminent jurist like yourself who, behind this very serious veneer is actually a great fanatic of jazz.
The king of Bangkok, Thailand, played alto sax with Benny Goodman. Bill Clinton plays the tenor sax. So the eminence, or otherwise in any particular field, law, politics, or anything, doesn't rule out the fact that jazz may be enjoyed by those persons, because jazz is a very warm, personal music. It speaks to the heart.
And it all began as an accident for you, wasn't it? You were 18 years old, you were in Bombay, and you were very into Western classical music. What happened?
But I asked the salesman at a very famous shop in Bombay, Rhythm House, to give me at that time 10-inch records we had, Brahms' Hungarian Dance. So I took it home and then I played it. I found nothing like Brahms at all. I heard some very different sounds. Then I got very mad. This stupid salesman doesn't know what he's doing. But somehow I liked the tune, so I played it again. I played it the third time. It happened to be Tiger Rag by Benny Goodman Trio. Benny Goodman clarinet, Teddy Wilson piano, and Gene Kumar drums.
It was a jazz album.
Yeah, and the bug had bitten.
And I believe that when you were in college, you in fact began a jazz band called SS Quartet, Soli Sorabji Quartet.
Well, yes, not really a jazz band, maybe a jazz group, you might say. And we did play. We played some tunes at college socials, and once I played on All India Radio. I remember that. But that was before I started my serious legal practice. Not because the two things were incompatible, but for a clarinet to be played well, you require a lot of time playing, rehearsing, and getting what they call the embouchure.
Yeah, because you played the clarinet at the time, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when your SS Quartet was going, I believe your favorite tune was Who's Sorry Now?
Yes. How do you know?
Why don't you sing us a few lines?
No, that's Who's Sorry Now. I really don't know, I've forgotten. Something, who's sorry now? Who's sorry now? Who's sorry that you did? Oh, sorry, I don't know that. Carry on.
Okay, well, Who's Sorry Now was a very long time ago, but what's the song that you really like humming now?
Well, I just burst into a tune called All of Me. And I like that tune. I've often played sort of surprise people by going on the stage when the band is playing, taking the mic and singing it. It goes, all of me, why not take all of me? Don't you see, I'm no good without you, and so on.
What's your first love? Is it law or is it jazz?
Law to keep me alive, jazz to keep me spiritually and intellectually alive.
So it's that tough a choice, huh? Both of them are loves of yours, major loves.
Of course.
They share equal space in your life, not in terms of time, but in terms of passion.
Well, jazz had more space, if I had the time. Oh, yes.
Wow.
Oh, yes. Because it's different. It's a different world. You see, remember one thing. A jazz tune is played afresh every time. It's never the same again.
Yeah.
And it's unpredictable in that sense. You don't know. Essence of jazz is improvisation.
Yeah.
And the musician creates. He translates his own thoughts and puts it to music.
Yeah.
And that's the great thrill, the beauty of jazz as far as I'm concerned.
But Mr. Sorabji, I've heard that in the 1950s you once bunked court in Bombay to fly to Karachi to hear the great American jazz trumpeter Dizzy Gillespie.
Yes, in fact, he'd come all the way to Karachi, and because of the Cold War, his trip to India was cancelled.
Yeah.
And it was very tragic if I could listen to him. Karachi is only 2 hours from Bombay.
You told them you were going for some legal brief.
You know, for the passport and for the visa authorities, I was going to see my old relatives. For the other thing, I said I had a brief because it would sound scandalous. This man, only 3 years old in practice, and he bunks court and goes to Karachi to listen to jazz.
They'd be dumbfounded. Okay, let's talk about jazz now. Now, we've heard that it began very early in the 20th century amongst the African American communities in the United States. But what is jazz music?
Jazz is what people laugh, cry, sing, and live. Actually, instead of you recognize jazz when you hear it. So you don't have to go by any definitions as such. Jazz music is essentially black music which originated in New Orleans. Thereafter it got refined, Chicago, Goodman, mainstream music. But the essence of jazz is its improvisation. That's the main quality. And that's what
Jazz music is improvised largely.
essentially, that's in essence.
Yeah.
And
In that sense, it's a lot like Indian classical music, which is improvised largely.
yeah, what I mean by improvise is you don't stick to the score. In classical music, except with that bit cadenza where the soloist can have his own interpretation, play his own. Here, there's no little score. You have a melody that they say, hey boys, what did we play? Who's sorry now? All of me? That's the main melody. And then each soloist plays his own interpretation of that melody.
Yeah, but let me ask you, because in Indian classical music, depending on the talent and the mood of the musician, he or she can improvise anything from 10% to 90% of his performance. How much of jazz is improvised?
That is so.
Similar?
Largely, I won't say 10 or 90% or anything, but largely improvised.
Okay.
Jazz tune is never the same again. Played the same way, as I told you before.
Yeah.
And about jazz, the other thing which moved me was it really represented the music, the feeling, the frustrations, the agony of the blacks. It was a terrible time in the United States, you know that.
Yeah, yeah. They were segregated in that
Even
part of
after
the early
slavery
20th
was
century.
abolished,
Yeah.
the racial discrimination in practice was terrible.
Yeah.
A black musician
Especially-
couldn't come with a white band.
Yeah.
She had to come by the back door, especially in the South.
Yeah.
Very deep-rooted prejudice, and they suffered a lot. And somehow that had a bond.
Yeah.
You'd like that.
Okay, another basic question in jazz. What are the typical instruments of jazz?
The essential instruments of original traditional jazz were clarinet, trumpet or cornet, piano, bass, drums.
Right.
Then afterwards, when they became swing, there were many other bands. There was a sax section, alto sax, tenor sax,
Yeah.
more trumpets, more trombones.
Yeah.
Then of course bass, drums, guitar, and piano was always there.
All of me, why not take all of me? Can't you see I'm no good without you? Take my lips, I want to lose them. Take my arms, I'll never use them.
Mr. Sarabji, who are your favorite jazz musicians?
About 100.
Who's on top of the list?
Benny Goodman.
Yeah.
Two reasons. I played the clarinet so naturally.
Yeah, he was a great clarinet player.
Oh yes, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
And then the other great musicians I like was a tenor player called Lester Young. Great tenor sax player.
But talk about Benny Goodman. You met him many times, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
And I believe that one of them, you bumped into him when he was stark naked. What was happening, Mr. Sarabji?
No, I was late for his appointment at his residence, so I felt very sorry. Then I told the man I was going. His attendant was there at home. I said, I'm going next day to Bombay. I must meet him.
This is where, New York.
New York. He said he's gone up into the building. He goes for a swim there. He's swimming there. 23rd floor, 24th floor. He gave me the instructions. So I went there up the. I said, Benny. Of course, he was, who's there? Because he was sorry. And he had his swim. He was powdering himself. And so this chair.
Powdering himself.
Yeah, he was powdering himself. He had this chair. But, I mean, that made a difference to our conversation. And the conversation was not only music. He talked about India. At that time, Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister. So he was quite excited about a young man being the Prime Minister, also about the population control policy, which he thought was very important everywhere, especially for India. And so we talked. He went on powdering, I went on talking, and I went on questioning.
You had very funny incidents with Benny Goodman, but you've also had a very funny incident with Dizzy Gillespie, the other great jazz musician we were talking about earlier. You invited him home here in Delhi, and what happened?
Well, I invited him and other local musicians for dinner. He was very informal. He was enchanted them, he talked to them, said about his experiences as a young black musician, and the rhythms. Local musicians, he explained to the rhythms of the band and the different things, and then we went for dinner. And you see, we Parsis have a dish, like biryani, you said Muslims, we have a dish called dhan shak. So that's brown rice, sugar rice, and dal, meat. So Dizzy went there, had a good helping, filled up his plate, came in the room where we were all talking. After this time, he went again. He had another big helping. Now, I want my guests to eat well, but I said, my God, if this doesn't suit him, if something happens, he's got indigestion
Delhi
or
belly.
dysentery, my neck is going to be screwed by the organizer. But he was all right. Nothing happened, nothing untoward. He played better, I think, the next day.
Mr. Sarabji, you listen to jazz every day, right?
Well,
Almost every day?
almost.
How much jazz do you listen to?
It depends. Over the weekends, much more. In the day, as I'm finished my work, having dinner, I just put on some jazz CD. But mainly over weekends.
You were telling us earlier that, law and jazz are both equal passions of yours. Maybe jazz is more. Let me ask you a question. If you were given a choice, you could be Chief Justice of India, or you could play, like the great Benny Goodman, the American jazz great. Which would you choose?
No question. I like to play like Benny Goodman.
Are you serious or are you trying to be funny?
No, I'm dead serious.
You're dead
But
serious.
there I'll be able to create music. I'll be able to play anywhere. I have to take my clarinet, go to the pianist, ask him for the key. Then it will be India, it will be anywhere, Southeast Asia, even Europe. That's the great thing. You create music. You make people happy. You see the whole people joining you with it. That emotion you never get. Of course, Chief Justice of India is an important post. As far as I'm not that I'm dedicating it. But for me, I would any day play like Benny Goodman, which I'm doing in Fantasyland now.
You prefer to be a great jazz musician than a great jurist, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, but when we met a couple of days ago, you mentioned that jazz has actually influenced your practice of law. How's that happen?
Maybe because I don't make lengthy notes when I prepare an argument.
In court.
Yeah, of course. Just heads and then improvise. And jazz
Like
is
jazz.
improvisation, yes, and then you improvise, and it's important. Because after you made notes, you may have to modify them, go back, go forward, depending on the questions you get from the bench. So you must be alert on your feet, and you must have the art of improvisation, as a jazz musician also has. So to that extent, I liked it, because there are people who prepare pages and pages of notes. Somehow that's alien to my temperament.
Okay, so you're like so into jazz, but perhaps the highest profile jazz enthusiast is the former US President Bill Clinton. But I believe that when he came to India as president in the year 2000, you were Attorney General in the Vajpayee regime, you met him. What happened? Did you talk about jazz?
You see, what happens is when these dignitaries come at Rashtrapati Bhavan, he stands in one place, and then your name is called out. So then you go and shake hands with him, greet him, say a few words. So as usual, when he was there, that's how I told him, say, President, capital jazz. The fellow couldn't understand. So he said, sorry, Sarabji, Attorney General of India. Okay, very good. So I just walked up, said, welcome to India, Mr. President, but I'm not going to talk to you about Constitution or the rule of law, but another common friend. He was also president, Lester Young, Prez. So Clinton just looked at me, his lips fell apart. Lester Young. He could never imagine that in India, the region of India, would talk about a tenor sax player who was known by his nickname Prez. And then he is also president. So the Hindu photographer took a very fine picture, and then you see Clinton's lips a little apart in amazement, in total amazement. Then, of course, other people were behind. So I said, we'll catch up. And I gave him a CD of my favorite tunes. And he's a very sharp memory. After a couple of years, he met me. He says, I'm listening to your CD. Some of them are my favorite tunes also. Remember, he has a very sharp memory.
Okay, I'll tell you what, which is one of your favorite tunes, which is also a favorite tune of Bill Clinton, one of those common favorites which we can play for our viewers now.
Sweet Georgia Brown. I don't know whether Clinton likes it.
Okay,
But my perennial request is Sweet Georgia Brown. The words also are there. But normally, then the Sweet Georgia Brown, after two lines, it's like to be Sweet Georgia Brown. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, 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 Sweet Georgia Brown. Da, 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 ba, da, ba, da, ba, Sweet Georgia Brown. And then, of course, after the tune melody is over, then each musician takes the solo.
Mr. Sarabji, let's talk about jazz in India now. Now, we hear that it began in the 1930s. You know, there's the hotels like the Grand in Kolkata were playing it, hotels like the Taj Mahal Hotel in Bombay, and Greens in Bombay were playing it as well. That's right. But how big is jazz in India today?
Well, it hasn't got a mass appeal like pop and rock and other forms of music, but it is slowly reviving. I'm saying this because when we have the jazz, what we call Utsav, we call it Yatra, we call it Jazz Festival because the bureaucrats would feel of jazz. बराबर नहीं है jazz की बात करता है तो इसे यात्रा बोल दो that gets the
You
spiritual
started the Jazz Yatra in 1978.
That's right.
Festival, basically. It's become an annual event now.
Yeah.
Almost.
But it started in Bombay.
Yeah.
And
But you
then-
take it to different cities, right?
Well, Bombay, Delhi, Pune, Bangalore, depending, Calcutta, depending on the arrangements that they can make.
Yeah.
But there were great musicians who came at that time.
Yeah.
In 78 onwards, great musicians, Sonny Rollins, for example, Stan Getz.
Yeah.
And thereafter there was Stepan Grappelli on violin, Max Roach, and very good musicians. But later on, we find, I'm sorry, but that's the fact, the interest in jazz amongst the young people is not that much. If we got a good jazz artist, we'd be able to sell 1,000 to 1,200 tickets. But if they got a rock pop star, it will be full out.
People seem to be more into learning things like the synthesizer, the bass guitar, the electric guitar, rather than the typical jazz instruments like the trumpet and the clarinet and the saxophone.
Yes, those instruments are difficult to play, difficult to rehearse. It's very easy with the bass guitar, but there's nothing wrong with them. So long as the essential thing, it's a rhythm, and there's improvisation. But that's the trend. I'm not passing any judgment, nothing superior or inferior. But the thing is, interest in jazz, as we saw early on, has not been sustained. But I think it's again reviving. That's the feeling I get, because last time we had a full house when we had our Utsav. And this time also in December, first week, you're going to have it.
Where?
This
in
time
Delhi?
at Kamani.
In Delhi.
Yeah,
right.
in Delhi.
Right, okay.
They may
Who are
have
the great jazz musicians of India today?
There's Mohsen Menezes,
Okay, he's a
Pianist.
pianist and composer.
pianist, composer,
Yeah.
and a very thoughtful man. I mean, Tony Kotros, who plays the trumpet.
Madhav Chari is another.
Madhav Chari, of course, very fine pianist.
Yeah.
He's in Madras. And there is Amit Hari's group. There are others.
And Louis Banks is there, he plays.
I was about to say that, but the outstanding is Louis Banks and also Braz. Braz Gonzalez is a son-in-law of Chick Chocolate, but he doesn't normally play. He doesn't. Usually, he's reluctant to play because he's more in gospel music and he writes that. But very fine. But the great musicians who were there, as I told you, was Rudy Cotton, Chick Chocolate, tremendous on trumpet. When some pianist asked him, Chick, what key? Key? Any key, man, play. And he had no problem with any key. Great.
But Mr. Sarabji, if one wants to listen to jazz in India, okay, see, for example, if you're in London, you can always go to a place like Ronnie Scott's or something like that. But if you're in Delhi or Mumbai or Calcutta or Bombay or Hyderabad or Bangalore, where do you go to hear jazz?
I believe Blue Frog in Bombay is very good. And one of our members of the managing committee of Capital Jazz, Arvinda Dhingra, he is very keen on having a club where people can go sit, listen to music, have a drink, and relax. I don't know what he's called it. I'm not too sure. But there's nothing comparable to Ronnie Scott.
Right.
Or the other places where Ronnie Scott,
Yeah.
100, where Humphrey Lytton used to play on Oxford Street
Yeah.
and other places.
Right.
You been to Ronnie Scott?
Yes, I have, yeah. Many times, actually. Yeah. Finally, Mr. Sarabji, besides your great love for jazz, I know you're very into English literature, particularly English poetry.
And that's so.
You like Shakespeare a lot as well.
Shakespeare's sonnets I carry with me everywhere, short. But then, as far as music is concerned, some lines of John Keats I find very appropriate.
Okay, why don't you recite those for us? So we're going to combine poetry and music over here.
Yes, and another poem written about Lester Young, the great tenor saxophonist.
Okay.
So those are the
So we can
lines-
combine poetry and jazz as well.
Quite
Okay,
so.
okay.
The one I like very much about music is the lines by John Keats. And these are the lines. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes play on. Those unheard are sweeter. In jazz, unheard are the improvised tunes that will come in. They're unheard of. They're sweeter. So therefore, ye soft pipes play on. And about Lester Young,
Play on, it's almost like, let's hear the improvisation. Yeah.
and about Lester Young, these are the lines I like very much. Sometimes was cool like an eternal blue flame burning in the old Kansas City nunnery. He was from Kansas City, Lester Young. Sometimes he was happy, till he'd think about his birthplace and his blood-stained clay hills and grove-filled trees. Most time he was blowing on the wonderful tenor sax of his, preaching in very cool tones, shouting only to remind you of a certain point in his blue messages. He was our president as well.
Great, thank you very much. That was fantastic. It's been a fascinating time talking about jazz with you, and your enthusiasm is amazing.
My pleasure. In fact, I really enjoyed this. I went down memory lane.
So, Mr. Sarabji, as we conclude the show, why don't you hum a few lines of your favorite piece played by Benny Goodman, Moonglow?
Bum buri buru ba ba, bum buri buru be, bum buri buru ba ba, ba 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 ba. That's Moonglow for you.
So what's your hotel type?
The star type, bazaar type, the Sat Samundar Par type, the beach type, the business type, the easy to reach type, the history type, the mystery type, the love ka chemistry type. Whatever be your hotel type, get up to 60% off on the world's largest travel website.
Expedia! Boom boom.
हमारे घर में शांति की बड़ी कमी है। कल प्रोजेक्ट सबमिट करना है। शुक्र है कि अब मैं घर के किसी भी कोने से प्रिंट कर सकता हूँ।
HP Ink Advantage wireless printer can help your child shine. SMS print to 56070.
Hey, that presentation's today. Can we do it?